Continuing from the previous chapter, the Emperor of the Soul had finally ascended to the rank of Do Di. A blood-red rain poured down from the sky, drenching the world in a crimson hue, as if the entire realm had turned scarlet at that moment. So, this is the power of a Do Di. Watching as the terrifying assault was effortlessly dispersed by the Emperor of the Soul, even Gu Yuan and the others couldn't help but feel a deep sense of helplessness. No wonder this level was so difficult to reach. The difference between them was as vast as heaven and earth. With your paltry strength, you dare to dream of being the savior? The Emperor of the Soul's blood-red eyes fixated on Gu Yuan, his tone carrying a faint hint of mockery. With a casual wave of his hand, a beam of blood-red light shot forth from his palm. The next moment, everyone witnessed a mountain range below, along with tens of thousands of powerful warriors within it, being obliterated in an instant, leaving no chance for escape or resistance. Seeing such brutal methods from the Emperor of the Soul, everyone's expressions changed once again. This so-called alliance is nothing but a paper tiger. Gu Yuan, I gave you a chance back then, but unfortunately, you failed to grasp it. The Emperor of the Soul's blood-red eyes locked onto Gu Yuan as he spoke slowly. Now, it's all over. As the Emperor of the Soul surveyed the faces filled with fear and despair, a sense of boredom suddenly washed over him. What once seemed troublesome now barely held his attention. A Do Di was like a god in this world, and in their eyes, all others were mere ants. With those words, the Emperor of the Soul extended a slender finger toward Gu Yuan and lightly pointed. Instantly, the heavens trembled, and an endless aura of blood rapidly gathered at his fingertip, forming into a beam of blood-red light that shot toward Gu Yuan with terrifying speed. Seeing the Emperor of the Soul make his move, Gu Yuan's heart sank. He quickly mobilized his Do Qi, but just as he was about to harness the energy of the heavens for defense, the Emperor of the Soul smiled and pointed again, whispering, "Seal." As this word fell, Gu Yuan was horrified to discover that he had lost his connection with the energy of the heavens. This sudden turn of events left Gu Yuan visibly shaken. A Do Sheng's strength lay not only in their vast Do Qi but even more in their ability to freely manipulate the energy of the heavens for offense and defense. But now, with just a word, the Emperor of the Soul had severed this ability, as if cutting off one of Gu Yuan's arms. This unexpected development sent a wave of dread through those present. However, Gu Yuan, with his vast experience, reacted swiftly. The Do Qi within him surged to its peak, and with a low growl, he condensed it into a massive finger, covered in intricate patterns, and launched it fiercely toward the blood-red light. The blood-red light collided with the enormous finger in midair, resulting in a deafening explosion. Yet, the giant finger shattered, and the blood-red light, undeterred, struck Gu Yuan's thick Do Qi defense with lightning speed. The collision of the two forces shattered Gu Yuan's seemingly solid Do Qi defense almost instantly, like a fragile barrier crumbling before an unstoppable force. In the blink of an eye, the blood-red light struck Gu Yuan's body with a fierce impact. A mouthful of crimson blood spurted out as he staggered backward, barely managing to steady himself thanks to Zhu Kun's timely intervention. A Do Di stands above heaven and earth. Trying to manipulate heavenly energy in front of me is nothing but wishful thinking, the Emperor of the Soul remarked with a faint smile. He suddenly raised his hand toward the sky, where the dense blood clouds roiled above. With a slight clench of his fist, the clouds churned, and the sound of thunder erupted. A massive bolt of blood-red lightning descended from the sky, tearing through the void and striking mercilessly toward the allied forces below. Form up and counterattack. Gu Yuan quickly wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and shouted sharply. If that blood-red lightning were allowed to strike, the casualties among the allied forces would be catastrophic. At Gu Yuan's command, the allied forces swiftly gathered their strength. An immense Do Qi dragon rapidly formed in the sky, roaring as it charged toward the descending blood-red lightning. The two colossal forces clashed in the sky, with the blinding light of their impact illuminating every corner of the central plains. However, the clash did not last long. The eerie blood-red lightning forcefully shattered the Do Qi dragon, scattering it into the wind. As the dragon dissipated, many of the strong warriors within the allied forces paled, simultaneously coughing up blood, clearly suffering from the backlash of the impact. One man, standing alone, was able to contend against the entire alliance of powerful warriors. The strength of a Dodi was so terrifying that in the face of such power, no matter how vast the numbers, they seemed utterly insignificant. Gu Yuan and Zhu Kun exchanged a glance, both seeing the shock in each other's eyes. Although they had expected the strength of a Dodi to be overwhelming, witnessing it firsthand was beyond anything they could have imagined. The combined might of so many powerful warriors couldn't even hold a candle to the Emperor of the Soul. A Dodi is too terrifying, Yin Jian muttered bitterly. Against such power, they had no chance of victory. No matter what, we must hold on. As long as we can delay until Xiao Yan completes his retreat, we can turn the tide. Gu Yuan gritted his teeth as he spoke. Upon hearing this, Yin Jin and the others could only smile bitterly. It wasn't that they didn't want to hold out, but against the absolute power of the Emperor of the Soul, any action they took seemed futile. Just a little more time, that's all we need. I can feel it. Xiao Yan's dragon seal is fading fast. That kind of pressure is definitely not something an ordinary Do Shang can possess. Ziyan suddenly spoke up, her voice filled with excitement. She shared a connection with Xiao Yan through the dragon seal. Though she couldn't determine his exact condition, the intense fluctuations of the seal allowed her to gauge his current state. Upon hearing this, Gu Yuan and the others felt a jolt in their hearts. The previously bleak expressions on their faces were replaced with ones of excitement. This was perhaps the most hopeful news they had received in a long time. In that case, we must stop this guy at all costs today. Zhu Kun raised his head, his gaze fixed on the Emperor of the Soul, who stood in the sky, surrounded by blood clouds, exuding an eerie aura. A faint trace of ferocity flashed in his eyes. Gu Yuan, reorganize the allied forces. I'll handle him. With those words, Zhu Kun shot into the sky without giving Gu Yuan and the others a chance to respond. His body twisted and transformed into a massive dragon, so enormous it left one speechless. The overwhelming dragon's might, though barely, managed to disperse some of the blood-soaked atmosphere. Primordial ancient dragon. The Emperor of the Soul gazed at the massive dragon hovering in the sky, a flicker of interest appearing in his eyes. With a smile, he said, I have just ascended to Dodi, and I happen to be in need of a mount. If you submit to me, I will ensure the survival of your primordial ancient dragon clan. What do you say? Zhu Kun did not respond to the Emperor of the Soul's words. Instead, he opened his massive dragon mouth, unleashing a purple-golden beam of destructive energy aimed directly at the Emperor. Stubborn fool. The Emperor of the Soul shook his head as he casually waved his sleeve. The terrifying beam of light instantly shattered, scattering into countless fragments of light. In the blink of an eye, his figure flickered like a ghost, suddenly appearing atop the giant dragon's body. With a light stomp of his foot, the purple-golden dragon scales exploded, and dragon blood gushed out like a waterfall from the wounds. The sudden, excruciating pain caused Zhu Kun's massive body to writhe violently. Each thrash of his powerful form caused the very space around him to shatter. Boom! With cold, indifferent eyes, the Emperor of the Soul stomped again, sending the colossal dragon, which spanned tens of thousands of meters, plummeting from the sky. The impact created a deep chasm in the mountain range below. Seeing Zhu Kun so easily defeated by the Emperor of the Soul, many of the warriors in the allied forces were filled with despair. A dull battle. The Emperor of the Soul returned to his blood lotus, casting a glance at the countless faces below, all filled with terror. He shook his head slowly, and the blood lotus began to ascend. This is the end. The name Central Plains, I don't like it. So, this land shall be destroyed? Raising his right hand, the Emperor of the Soul aimed at the blood clouds that covered the entire Central Plains. A sinister and cruel smile appeared on his lips as he suddenly swung his hand downward. As the Emperor of the Soul's hand fell, the thick blood clouds began to churn wildly, as if in a frenzy. The violent energy within them rapidly condensed, and in the blink of an eye, countless blood-red bolts of lightning flashed within the clouds. The moment these bolts of lightning, filled with destructive power, appeared, they rained down upon the central plains below. The entire region trembled as the ground cracked open. Wherever the blood lightning struck, even those hidden deep underground were instantly shattered into pieces by the sheer force of the shockwaves. Around the Alliance, with the protective barrier lost, millions, if not tens of millions, of people were instantly obliterated by the descending blood lightning. In mere moments, the area surrounding the Alliance headquarters was engulfed in a thick sea of blood, with countless people frantically fleeing toward the headquarters. It was a scene that truly resembled the end of the world. Damned bastard! Gu Yuan's eyes were bloodshot as he witnessed the devastation. Many of the Allied forces' strongest warriors were struck by the blood lightning, and without exception, their bodies and even their souls were instantly reduced to a mist of blood. Ha ha ha! As he watched the central plains nearly submerged in a sea of blood, the blood-red glow in the Emperor of the Soul's eyes grew even brighter. Amidst the torrential blood lightning, he threw his head back and laughed, like a demon of destruction emerging from the very depths of hell. Fall back to defend. Gu Yuan's voice was hoarse as he shouted. Under the relentless onslaught of blood lightning, the Allied forces had suffered devastating casualties, with countless warriors perishing. At this point, all they could do was continue to pull back their defenses and hold on with all their might. Ziyin and the other women gazed at the overwhelming sea of blood before them, their lips pressed tightly together as they struggled to suppress their despair, even though the scene left them feeling hopeless. Kai Lin held Xiao Xiao tightly in her arms, shielding her from the horrific massacre unfolding before them. "Mom, will Dad show up?" Xiao Xiao rested her small face on Kai Lin's fragrant shoulder, her tiny body trembling slightly. "Xiao Xiao, be good. Dad will definitely come. He still has to protect you." Kai Lin gently patted Xiao Xiao's back, her voice soft and reassuring. However, just as she finished speaking, she suddenly felt an incredibly terrifying force explode from within Xiao Xiao's body, a force that surpassed her own in an instant. As Xiao Xiao's aura surged, Xiao Zhan, Xiao Ding, Xiao Li, and the others nearby also experienced a sudden, dramatic increase in their power. Their bodies visibly grew taller, and their auras erupted with immense intensity. It's the power of the bloodline. The Dodi bloodline within them has been activated. Gu Yuan exclaimed in surprise. His expression quickly turned to one of joy. He raised his head sharply and saw layers of brilliant flames suddenly surge from the void. These flames slowly expanded, forming a massive fiery shield that enveloped everything within 100,000 miles of the Sky Mansion Alliance. The blood lightning struck the fiery shield with tremendous force, but it could no longer exhibit its previous destructive power. Instead, as the flames roared, the blood lightning was reduced to nothingness. The sky was filled with surging flames, which eventually coalesced into the figure of a person, entirely shrouded in resplendent fire. Even Gu Yuan and the others couldn't hide their expressions of ecstatic relief as they gazed upon that fiery figure. "Xiao Yan, we've done all we can. From here on, it's up to you." The brilliant flames spread like a fiery cloud from the void, their terrifying heat rising between heaven and earth, causing the sea of blood on the ground to evaporate rapidly. The Alliance leader. It's Xiao Yan. The Alliance leader has returned. We're saved. Long live the Alliance leader. The sudden appearance of the protective flames brought the fleeing masses to a halt. All eyes turned skyward, locking onto that familiar figure within the radiant flames. In an instant, nearly everyone's face lit up with excitement and joy. Deafening cheers echoed across the land, and many, overwhelmed with emotion, fell to their knees, tears of relief streaming down their faces as hope blossomed from the depths of despair. Through countless battles, Xiao Yan's position within the Alliance had become unparalleled. Though he might lack in age or seniority, everyone knew it was his seemingly frail shoulders that bore the weight of the entire Alliance. To many in the Alliance, that figure was one that could never fail. This near-religious fervor for Xiao Yan had taken root deep in their hearts. In times of despair, this fervor spread like a virus, infecting even those who didn't belong to the Sky Mansion Alliance, as they, too, found their faces lighting up with excitement. In the face of utter hopelessness, they desperately needed a pillar to lean on. Above, the fiery shield spread out, covering millions of people within its protective embrace. As the flames gradually receded, the figure within them became clearer and clearer. Moments later, the flames subsided entirely, revealing a black-clad figure standing distinctly in the midst of heaven and earth. It really is Xiao Yan. In a location not far from the Alliance headquarters, a large crowd gathered, clearly all belonging to the same faction. At this moment, within the crowd, a robust man raised his head, his eyes burning with fervor as he gazed at the figure in the sky, his voice brimming with excitement. Lu Qing, is it really him? Behind the man, a beautiful young woman couldn't help but ask. Who could have imagined that in just over 10 short years, the junior who once trained alongside them at the Jianan Academy would now stand at the true pinnacle of this continent? Haha, Lu Fei, there's no mistaking it. Ah, this guy is truly terrifying. Back in the academy, he and I were about the same. The man, none other than Lu Qing, who was once known as the Tyrant Spear of Jianan Academy, laughed with a mix of amazement and admiration. Lu Fei bit her lip gently, looking up at the distant figure in the sky, now worshipped as a deity by countless people. Her expression was somewhat complex. Who could have predicted that the person she had clashed with in the inner academy back then would rise to such heights? In other parts of the Alliance, other familiar faces also looked up at the figure in the sky with a sense of wonder and reflection. Xiao Yan. Outside the fiery shield, the many strong warriors of the Soul Clan were instantly filled with intense fear when they recognized that familiar face. It was clear they hadn't expected that in just over half a year, Xiao Yan would have become so terrifyingly powerful. Do Di. Standing on the Blood Lotus, the Emperor of the Soul also experienced intense turmoil in his blood-red eyes. After a moment, he couldn't help but mutter, How is this possible? As his muttering trailed off, the Emperor of the Soul's face twisted into a snarl, and his voice turned into a roar, thundering across the sky like a storm. One couldn't blame the Emperor of the Soul for losing his composure so suddenly. The price he had paid to reach this point was unimaginable. Yet, just as he succeeded, he saw that someone else had also reached the same level. How could he accept this so easily? Especially since this person was, just a year ago, a mere ant he could have crushed with a flick of his hand. The imbalance in his heart swelled to the breaking point. Heh, in this world, you're not the only one who can ascend to Do Di. As the flames receded, the young man in the black robe emerged. He raised his head and looked at the somewhat unhinged Emperor of the Soul, a slight smile forming on his lips. His originally pitch-black eyes now shimmered with a brilliant glow, giving him an aura of warmth and profound depth. On his forehead was a flame-shaped mark, radiating with many vibrant colors. A faint, unique energy fluctuation emanated from it, causing the magma deep within the earth to flow more swiftly. Xiao Yan stood quietly in the sky, with no visible fluctuation of Do Qi around him, making him appear rather ordinary. However, only the truly powerful could sense the unimaginable force hidden within his slender body, a force capable of destroying worlds. You carry the scent of Tuasha Ancient Emperor on you. The Emperor of the Soul was no ordinary person. After the initial shock, the fluctuation in his blood-red eyes gradually subsided. With a slightly grim expression, he carefully scrutinized Xiao Yan before speaking in a cold tone. I was fortunate enough to receive the ancient emperor's inheritance, Xiao Yan replied with a smile. Damn that void-swallowing flame. The Emperor of the Soul couldn't help but twitch with anger as he heard this, his heart seething with fury. He was certain that void-swallowing flame knew about the ancient emperor's inheritance, but had deliberately kept it from him. Xiao Yan cast a calm glance at him, then his gaze swept over the shattered land below. Finally, he extended his hand, and a brilliant light descended upon Zhu Kun, who had been knocked out of the sky by the Emperor of the Soul. Under the radiance of this light, the gruesome wounds on Zhu Kun's body began to heal rapidly. As his injuries healed, Zhu Kun's enormous form quickly reverted to his human shape, though his face remained somewhat pale. With a wry smile, he said to Xiao Yan, "You finally came out. Any later, and everyone here would have been slaughtered by that guy." "Senior Zhu Kun, please rest for a while," Xiao Yan replied softly. Although Xiao Yan's tone was gentle, Zhu Kun could feel the faint pressure hidden within his words. It was a pressure that seemed to dominate even the heavens and earth. Under such pressure, even he had no choice but to bow his head. Nodding in agreement, he said, "We'll handle defending against the Soul Clan's army. As for the Emperor of the Soul, we'll leave him to you. Only a Dodi can deal with another Dodi." Xiao Yan smiled and nodded in return, his gaze sweeping over the battlefield below. When he saw the numerous casualties among the allied forces, his lips tightened slightly. It was clear that the Emperor of the Soul had intended to annihilate them completely. Quite ruthless methods. To complete the final step of creating the Imperial-grade primordial pill, you resorted to such slaughter, Xiao Yan murmured. In the struggle between kings, the outcome is all that matters, not the process, the Emperor of the Soul sneered, staring at Xiao Yan. "Today marks the day of our final battle. If you lose, there will be no survivors among your alliance. If you lose, I will ensure that the Soul Clan is wiped out," Xiao Yan responded coolly. His hatred for the Soul Clan ran deep, and if given the chance, he would not hesitate to annihilate them completely. When it came to vengeance, he would not feign righteousness. What needed to be done would be done. Haha, good. Today, let us see whether it is the Soul Clan that falls or your alliance that perishes. The Emperor of the Soul laughed uproariously, as a monstrous wave of blood surged from his body, transforming into an endless sea of blood. The power emanating from this blood sea was so overwhelming that it instilled fear in all who sensed it. "Soul Clan, retreat 1,000 miles. The Emperor of the Soul's voice was icy cold as it echoed through the blood sea. Upon hearing his command, the strong warriors of the Soul Clan quickly retreated. The clash between two Dodi could easily bring about the destruction of the world. Anyone caught in the crossfire, even a peak Do Sheng, would certainly perish on the spot. Everyone understood that the true deciding factor in this war was the outcome of the battle between Xiao Yan and the Emperor of the Soul. The defeat of either would determine the final fate of both sides. "Xiao Yan, today is the day I am crowned as an emperor. Give me a fight worth remembering." The blood in the Emperor of the Soul's eyes surged wildly as he stood within the blood sea, exuding a sense of boundless pride. Though his methods were ruthless, he was undeniably a figure of extraordinary ambition. In this battle, one of them was destined to fall. This battle would be fought with everything they had, to the very end. A fiery determination burned in Xiao Yan's eyes as well. This battle would be the most epic confrontation the continent of Doqi had seen in millennia. Regardless of success or failure, this battle will be remembered for eternity. As they gazed at the suddenly empty sky, everyone held their breath. Though the two had yet to clash, the sheer force of their presence weighed on them like a mountain. A sea of blood surged to the heavens, filling the sky. The crimson and Emperor of the Soul's eyes deepened as he stared across at Xiao Yan. After a moment of this standoff, he suddenly stepped forward. With that single step, the entire sky trembled, and the blood sea roared wildly, transforming into a massive wave of blood, tens of thousands of feet tall, crashing down towards Xiao Yan. Under the towering blood wave, Xiao Yan's figure appeared as insignificant as an ant. Xiao Yan's eyes, glowing with a dazzling light, locked onto the terrifying wave. The energy within it was potent enough to obliterate a 9-star Do Sheng, soul and all. "Come forth, fire." Xiao Yan's lips moved, and with a soft command, the ground below split open with a thunderous roar. From the abyss, crimson magma surged up like a fountain, suspended in the sky, forming a colossal wave of magma that collided fiercely with the blood wave. The earth shook as blood rain mixed with magma poured down like a torrential storm, engulfing the entire central plains. Though his attack was blocked, Emperor of the Soul was not surprised. If a Do-Di could be defeated so easily, he wouldn't have pursued this goal for 1,000 years. However, despite his calm, his expression grew more serious. Xiao Yan's effortless counter meant he had truly stepped into that realm, not just through some temporary means. Standing on a lotus of blood, Emperor of the Soul suddenly pointed towards the blood-red clouds covering the central plains. At his command, the clouds writhed like a massive, living organ before violently contracting. As the boundless blood clouds constricted, the sky collapsed, and black cracks spread rapidly across the sky. In the next instant, the blood clouds exploded outward, unleashing a torrential downpour of blood lightning, each bolt as massive as a mountain, crashing down upon Xiao Yan. The power within each bolt was enough to strike terror in the hearts of even the likes of Gu Yuan. As he watched the onslaught of blood lightning, Xiao Yan's expression turned grave. These bolts carried immense ferocity and malice. If struck, the invading wrath could shatter one's sanity. A brilliant flame erupted from within Xiao Yan, quickly transforming into a towering figure of fire. The fiery giant opened its mouth wide, and in an instant, the world fell silent. A burst of dazzling flame shot forth from its mouth, crashing into the sea of blood lightning like a fiery storm cloud. High above, flames and blood lightning clashed violently, ripping open massive fissures across the trembling earth. As they watched the deadly exchange of fire and lightning in the sky, everyone's hearts were in their throats. The terror of such a battle was beyond words. Any stray attack landing on the Alliance headquarters could result in countless casualties. Between the two, who has the better chance of winning? Liang asked, visibly shaken by the terrifying battle, turning to Gu Yuan beside him. Gu Yuan paused, then smiled bitterly and shook his head. This is my first time witnessing a fight between Dou Di. As for who might win, it's hard to say. However, Emperor of the Soul is, after all, the leader of the Soul Clan, which has produced Dou Di before. His mastery of certain abilities might be slightly superior to Xiao Yan's. But of course, there's no need to worry too much. Xiao Yan also inherited Tuasha Ancient Emperor's legacy. He might have some hidden trump cards. Upon hearing his words, everyone could only force a bitter smile, continuing to watch the epic battle with intense anxiety. In the face of such a conflict, they were utterly powerless to intervene. The blood lightning roared across the sky, filling the heavens with its crimson glow. Emperor of the Soul's eyes darkened as he looked at Xiao Yan, who was holding his ground despite the relentless attacks. This stalemate was not the outcome he desired. Xiao Yan, don't think that just because you've reached Dou Di, you can rival me. Taking a deep breath, Emperor of the Soul's expression became unusually grave. The blood lightning began to diminish, and under the horrified gazes of those watching, he suddenly opened his mouth, unleashing a powerful suction force. The blood clouds that had shrouded the central plains were instantly transformed into blood light, all of which surged into his mouth. The thick blood clouds, formed from the essence blood of countless people, were swallowed in one gulp by Emperor of the Soul. With the blood clouds that had covered the central plains for half a year consumed, the warm sunlight once again poured down. Gazing at the slightly blinding sun, many felt a surge of emotion. It was only when faced with the atmosphere of impending doom that they realized how precious such ordinary things could be. Of course, they also understood that now was not the time to be relieved. The battle in the sky, which would decide the fate of the continent of Dou Qi, had only just entered its most critical stage. As the boundless blood clouds were swallowed by Emperor of the Soul, his body suddenly began to expand. In mere moments, he transformed into a colossal giant of blood, tens of thousands of feet tall. Blood light rapidly condensed around his body, forming a layer of blood-red armor that enveloped his massive form. The blood giant stood towering over the heavens, casting a shadow that covered the entire sky. Faced with such a terrifying sight, no one doubted that a single punch from Emperor of the Soul could turn tens of thousands of miles into an abyss. Haha, Xiao Yan, can you manifest a body like my Blood Emperor's form? Emperor of the Soul's enormous blood-red eyes fixed on Xiao Yan. Now, with every breath he took, thunder and lightning swirled, and the energy of the entire central plains trembled under his exhale. Dou Di's form, seeing the towering figure of Emperor of the Soul, Gu Yuan and the others' faces changed drastically. As members of ancient clans, They knew that a Do-di could draw the heavens and earth into their body. At that point, they became one with the world, capable of tearing the skies apart with a mere gesture. The power was unimaginably terrifying. This gigantic form was not made of energy but was a real, physical body. Just imagine the terror of a form stretching tens of thousands of feet tall. This ability was known as the Do-di's form, as only those who reached the level of Do-di could manifest it. So, when Gu Yuan and the others witnessed this scene, their expressions changed drastically. But before they could panic, Xiao Yan in the sky above faced the colossal figure without fear. He looked up with a laugh, changing his hand seals. The earth cracked open once more, and endless magma surged forth, transforming into rolling red flames that flowed into Xiao Yan's body. As the flames poured into Xiao Yan's body, his form rapidly expanded under countless nervous gazes. During this expansion, dazzling flames roared out from every pore, transforming into fire dragons that spiraled around him. You do have some skill. Seeing the brilliant flames surrounding Xiao Yan, a flicker of surprise passed through Emperor of the Soul's eyes before he sneered, "Let's see whether my Blood Emperor's form or your Flame Emperor's form is stronger." With a sneer, Emperor of the Soul took a massive step forward, bringing with him wind, clouds, and thunder. He unleashed a punch towards Xiao Yan, and the sky instantly collapsed. An endless torrent of blood energy surged towards Xiao Yan, the force of it terrifying beyond words. Seeing Emperor of the Soul charging straight at him, Xiao Yan let out a cold snort and did not dodge. He also threw a punch, with the brilliant fire dragon swirling around him, following the momentum of his fist and striking fiercely. Blood energy and fire dragons clashed with a thunderous roar, and the terrifying shockwave instantly shattered numerous mountain peaks below into dust. Countless people hurriedly sought shelter, as the destructive power of the battle between these two colossal figures in the sky was beyond imagination. Be careful. Gu Yuan and the others hurriedly combined their efforts to reinforce the protective shield. With the fire shield Xiao Yan had previously set up, they narrowly avoided being affected by the dreadful shockwave. In the sky, the towering figures of Xiao Yan and Emperor of the Soul, each tens of thousands of feet tall, staggered back a few steps through the void. With every step they took, the space beneath them shattered into patches of dark void. But as soon as they retreated, they surged forward again. This battle was not about dazzling techniques, but rather the clash of extreme power, and no one could imagine the visual impact of two colossal beings, each measuring tens of thousands of feet, engaging in close combat. With every collision, the wind and clouds shook, thunder flashed, and it seemed as though even the heavens and earth were trembling in response to the intense confrontation. The clash between these two giants wreaked havoc on the central plains. The ground shook violently, and massive chasms and abysses nearly split the central plains in two. All living beings trembled in fear, as even a slight ripple from the battle could instantly obliterate a Do Sheng. Gu Yuan and the others watched the distant sky with pale faces. The space there continuously collapsed and was then restored in an endless cycle, sending chills down their spines. The battle raged on for nearly half a day, with earth-shattering sounds reverberating across the entire continent of Do-chi. This commotion caught the attention of powerful figures outside the central plains, and they began to head toward the region. However, just as they were about to enter the central plains, the terrifying shockwave coming from the battle forced them to retreat, coughing up blood. Those who had previously seemed indifferent now turned ashen-faced, no longer daring to step into the fray. In the distant sky, another collision of immense visual impact occurred, and amidst the clash, a suppressed, low cry echoed. A terrifying firestorm erupted, and a massive figure plummeted to the ground, crushing an entire mountain range into an abyss. Seeing the colossal figure that had fallen to the ground, Gu Yuan and the others were overjoyed, for it was Emperor of the Soul who had fallen. It seemed that in this fierce confrontation, Xiao Yan had gained a slight advantage. Relying on pills to become a Do-di is indeed inferior. Xiao Yan received the ancient emperor's inheritance and spent nearly 3 years in the heavenly tomb diligently cultivating, whereas Emperor of the Soul has had only 6 months. Zhu Kun said, excitement rising on his face. Hearing his words, everyone else also broke into smiles, the immense pressure in their hearts lifting at this moment. In stark contrast to Gu Yuan and the others, the members of the Soul Clan were pale with despair. They understood all too well what their fate would be if Xiao Yan emerged victorious. As panic gripped their hearts, the colossal figure within the abyss once again soared into the sky, looking somewhat disheveled as it gazed at Xiao Yan. Emperor of the Soul, it seems your Blood Emperor's form is no match for my Flame Emperor's form. Xiao Yan slowly suppressed the churning energy within his body and smiled. And it appears you're beginning to tire? Emperor of the Soul's expression was extremely grim. He understood the state of his own body. After the direct clash, he realized that although his power was equally astonishing, perhaps due to relying on pills, his stamina was somewhat inferior to Xiao Yan's. Moreover, Xiao Yan's Do-Di form, strengthened by multiple heavenly flames, was overwhelmingly powerful, to the point where even his Blood Emperor's form seemed slightly outmatched. If this continued, he might indeed be the one to fall. But that was something he could never allow to happen. Don't be too quick to celebrate. Emperor of the Soul's gaze swept across the central plains below, a sinister look flashing in his eyes. Xiao Yan, I didn't want to resort to this, but you've left me no choice. Today, I'll use the entire central plains to bury you. As his chilling voice fell, Emperor of the Soul waved his hand, and a brilliant beam of blood light shot down, piercing the earth. To everyone's horror, they saw countless rays of blood light spread rapidly from that point, as if they were the blood vessels of the central plains. Xiao Yan was also surprised as he watched this scene. From above, he could see those bloodlines spreading at an incredibly terrifying speed, enveloping the entire central plains. While he was still puzzling over this, the ground of the central plains suddenly began to tremble violently, and massive beams of blood light erupted from various locations across the land. The places where these blood lights are rising, they seem to be where the Soul Clan set up the devouring spirit life extinguishing formation. Gu Yuan suddenly exclaimed as he observed the areas where the blood lights were emerging. The positions of these formations, when connected, Zhu Kun also seemed to recall something, his face suddenly changing with shock. When connected, they actually form another formation. Such a massive formation, Yin Jin and the others were horrified. A formation that could cover the entire central plains? Could someone really accomplish such a feat? Xiao Yan, my Soul Clan has planned for 1,000 years. No matter how dire the situation, we are always prepared. Even if you've ascended to Do-Di, today, you will still perish. The central plains was enveloped in blood light, and those pillars of light expanded high into the sky, forming an unimaginably large and sinister formation. This formation was passed down by the first Do-Di of our Soul Clan. Its name is the Emperor's Severing Formation. Emperor of the Soul looked at Xiao Yan with a sinister smile. In ancient times, a Do-Di truly did fall to this formation. Xiao Yan's gaze darkened slightly as he looked up at the strange formation surrounded by bloodlight in the sky. From it, he indeed sensed a faint aura of danger. As expected of Emperor of the Soul, to have anticipated even this situation, Xiao Yan said in a low voice. This formation clearly required extremely meticulous preparation. Unfortunately, in the past, he hadn't paid enough attention and failed to see the true purpose of those so-called devouring spirit life extinguishing formations. Always prepare for the worst. That's the reason my Soul Clan has endured to this day. Emperor of the Soul smiled proudly, but his expression soon turned grim again. With a wave of his sleeve, the space behind him tore open, and the sound of rushing water echoed out. The next moment, to everyone's horror, a tidal wave of blood surged out of the spatial rift, pouring into the so-called Emperor's Severing Formation. Xiao Yan, I'm using the blood of millions to fuel this battle. For you to fall within this formation, it will not have been in vain. As the massive blood sea surged into the formation, an eerie glow suddenly flickered within it. The blood light condensed intensely, and under countless gazes, it transformed into a gigantic, transparent blood blade, emanating an overwhelming stench of blood. The blood blade was extremely sinister, without a hilt, and the blood light swirling around it seemed capable of severing even the heavens and earth. As this eerie blood blade emerged, the radiant sun in the sky dimmed, and the world grew gradually darker, as if even the sun, moon, and clouds feared the presence of this sinister blade. Soul Clan, hear my command. Sacrifice your bodies to the blade. As the blood blade appeared, Emperor of the Soul suddenly shouted, and upon hearing his command, a disturbance erupted within the distant Soul Clan army. Then, over 1,000 Soul Clan experts gritted their teeth and flew out. With an indifferent expression, Emperor of the Soul changed his hand seal, and the blood blade flashed. In the next moment, the heads of the Soul Clan experts who had flown out were severed from their bodies, and as blood spurted out, their bodies rapidly withered, eventually turning to dust and dissipating into the wind. Absorbing the blood of these Soul Clan experts, the eerie blood blade grew even more solid. Xiao Yan, this is the end. Emperor of the Soul gazed fanatically at the sinister blood blade and suddenly spat out a mouthful of vital blood. As the blood landed on the blade, a humming sound resonated from it, and under the sound of that hum, the sense of danger in Xiao Yan's heart grew even stronger. The world fell silent, and everyone watched the scene in the sky. From that eerie blood blade, they felt a terrifyingly intense aura. This strike could very well deal a devastating blow to Xiao Yan. The Emperor's ghost blood blade. It turns out the legend is true. Gu Yuan's face turned pale. He recognized this so-called blood blade. He had seen records of it in the ancient texts of the Gu clan. This weapon had indeed once slain a Dou Di and shocked the entire continent. No one expected that after tens of thousands of years, they would witness this legendary weapon with their own eyes. This is bad, Gu Yuan muttered, clenching his fists, his face ashen. Xiao Yan took a deep breath, his expression gradually growing serious. If he couldn't withstand this strike, he might truly fall here. Emperor of the Soul, you came prepared, but so did I. Xiao Yan stared at Emperor of the Soul, and his hand seals suddenly changed. Then, he opened his mouth, and a brilliant, dazzling light shot out, expanding rapidly in the wind, transforming into a plaza that appeared in the sky. The Heavenly Flame Plaza? Seeing the familiar object, Gu Yuan and the others were momentarily stunned. That was the same Heavenly Flame Plaza they had taken from the ancient Emperor's cave mansion, but the flames within it were merely specimens without any real power. Could Xiao Yan be planning to use this to resist Emperor of the Soul's Emperor's severing formation? The Heavenly Flame Plaza floated in the sky, and with a swift movement, Xiao Yan appeared above it. At that moment, the brilliant flame mark on his forehead suddenly began to pulse violently. An indescribable wave of intent spread rapidly from the flame mark, sweeping across the entire continent of Douqi with extreme speed. In the name of Flame Emperor Xiao Yan, I command all flames under the heavens to heed my call. Xiao Yan's eyes snapped open, and dazzling flames erupted from his body. His commanding voice echoed grandly across every corner of the continent of Douqi. Rank 23 on the Heavenly Flame list, Chaotic Yellow Flame. Return to your place. The brilliant flame swirled around Xiao Yan like a king of fire, and as his command rang out, a loud explosion suddenly erupted from a mountain range tens of thousands of miles away from the central plains. A deep yellow flame shot out, streaking across the sky like a meteor, traversing space, and in mere moments, it appeared above the central plains, finally embedding itself into one of the stone pillars on the Heavenly Flame Plaza. As the deep yellow flame merged into the stone pillar, the chaotic yellow flame on it suddenly surged, transforming into a towering pillar of fire that shot into the sky.